and gentlemen, welcome to the third round of World Schools Debate Championship in Zagreb. Please turn off your mobile phones and stay safe to do so. The motion for this House reads, this House regrets the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. Debating this round are Team Bangladesh, who are proposing, as well as Team Singapore, who are opposing. Please welcome all the speakers. The adjudicators for this round are Igor Fras from Croatia, Laura Gunning from Australia, and Carl Martin Kierberg from Estonia. Please welcome. Each speaker has 8 minutes to deliver their speech. The end of the speech will be marked by a double knock. The first and the 7 minutes are protected from the points of information and will be marked by 1 knock. The first or the second speaker of each side will deliver a 4-minute reply speech for their side. There are no points of information during reply speeches. I now invite the first speaker of side proposition to deliver their speech and start of the debate.
For far too long have we deceived women to believe in the utopia of motherhood, that the sacrifices they make are minuscule to the rewards that they will generate. Where does this belief come from? It comes from the narrative that motherhood is a holy process, a process that can do you no harm. We changed that from team proposition. 3 burdens in our case. First, why this narrative is false in the majority of cases. Second, why this narrative is coercive and harmful to women. And finally, how this narrative is harmful to the children these women bear. What does our world look like? Our world looks like that if you as a mother or an expectant mother want to find intrinsic value in the small things like your child walking or your child speaking his first words, then we're perfectly okay with that. We are not okay with you being coerced into believing that those minuscule moments of happiness cancel out every single sacrifice you make along the way for that to happen. 3 arguments in my speech. First, why the narrative is false. Second, why this narrative is coercive. And finally, the lasting effect it has on the child. Before I move on to sure.
Telling people that social work is rewarding equally coerces them to become social workers. Do you therefore oppose this narrative?
Yeah, sure. If any narrative goes absolutely unopposed in society and becomes something that you cannot oppose or cannot opt out of, then sure, we're happy to oppose that narrative as well, or find counter narratives thereof. First argument, why the narrative is false. Because we understand that looking at your child succeed or his first steps can bring you happiness. But that's not the debate, whether you can garner small moments of happiness from your child. This debate is about whether that happiness weighs up in comparison to every single sacrifice that you make along the way. Because when is something rewarding? Something is only rewarding when the output or the outcomes of that action outweigh the efforts or the sacrifices that you make along the way. What do these sacrifices look like? First, the physical sacrifices. Not taking it back. You as an expectant mother go through 9 months of the worst hell that you'll ever experience in your entire life. You're wake up every morning feeling nauseous, feeling the need to vomit not only your food but also your blood. You feel like your food habits and what you want to do, where you want to go, what you want to see, all of these are being deeply affected and deeply changed by the concept of that pregnancy. You spend sleepless nights because your body's hormones have gone haywire and you literally cannot function throughout the entire day because you're exhausted, because your body feels like a bag of bones and flesh and not a functioning human body. In labor, you're going through the most painful experience known to man. A human woman's cervix will expand 9 times its regular size when you're giving birth. Imagine that amount of pain, that amount of excruciating pain, not for an instant, but for 14 hours, for days, in the cases of longer labors. Imagine all of that pain happening to you and you conceiving and you simply believing that it doesn't happen. But the pain is also psychological because this is a unique experience. We as men or we as husbands and sons cannot relate to what our mothers go through, our sisters go through when they're going through this pain. We We cannot relate, we cannot console them in any effective manner whatsoever. These people, psychologically, when they're giving birth, when they're bearing children, feel weak and feeble, feel like they're victims to their circumstances, and there is nothing that they can do about them. No medicine will comfort them as much as they want to. But finally, the harms are also to your identity. So even after that child has been born, you are forced to give up all of your identities in favor of motherhood. You lose out on your careers because your identity as a businesswoman or your identity as a politician comes inside your family, comes secondary to your identity and your responsibilities as a mother. But then why are the rewards that you gain not sufficient? Because these harms are objective, but the rewards are the harms that you incur are always objective, but the rewards are often subjective. The happiness that you gain from your child is not always rewarding. One, your child might not be successful, but even if he is successful, he might not follow exactly in your footsteps, grow up exactly how you imagined him to be. This child, but in the vast majority of cases, even if this child succeeds, you have no ownership over that success because society tells you that these are all personal efforts of that child in and of itself. The conclusion of this is that the narrative that says that it is all worth bringing life into this world is simply false. Why is it bad to preach an incorrect narrative? Because the person that is making that decision is deceived into that narrative. This is the exact same reason why we don't allow things like false advertising or fake news, because they establish a version of reality that is simply not true. But more importantly, this specific narrative is one that cannot be countered, especially in developing countries where you're told that it's a requirement for women to have children. It's a responsibility of women to have children. This narrative is inescapable, and thus it harms these women the most. Yes?
The motion clearly calls for you to oppose motherhood as a whole. Do you not think it is convenient for you to just shrink your case to coercion?
So we don't think it calls for us to oppose motherhood as a whole. It calls for us to oppose the belief that motherhood is rewarding and only a rewarding experience. They cannot misconstrue the motion to their benefit. Second argument about why this narrative is coercive. What is coercion? Coercion is a form of manipulation that implicitly pressurizes you to do something. What are the tenets of coercion? Firstly, an informational asymmetry. Even when that information exists, that this isn't a rewarding experience, that is hidden from you by society by means of that larger narrative, that this is rewarding. But secondly, also the lack of opt-out mechanism, while you cannot abandon that child, even once you find out that this is not a rewarding experience, you cannot shirk your responsibilities, you can only embrace them further. Why is this coercion unique to all other forms of coercions that they'll likely talk about in their case? One, the scale. Because compare this to the coercion that advertising or fake news chooses. Advertising coerces you into buying something. Fake news coerces you into voting for a certain party. This coercion literally coerces you to give up all your pre-existent identities and form a new identity. An identity which you do not understand the implications of. But secondly, also the effect. So, other forms of coercion have a widespread effect and do not cater to you as an individual. But this is an individual, this affects you on an individual scale, where you're forced in every moment, every waking moment, to buy into that narrative. How does this coercion work? From the very moment that child gets her first period, that is a cause for celebration. That's because that child is now ready to bear women. Your parents, your colleagues, your co-workers, all of them tell you that being a woman is an amazing thing. It's a glorious thing. And all of these harms are minuscule in compared to that. Art and media tell you that the holy grail of womanhood is motherhood. That all of your identity has to be tied to that one single thing. What are the impacts of this? This impacts you in a couple of different ways. Because your entire identity being hinged on motherhood tells you that motherhood is all you need to be happy. So it's okay to give up that six-figure salary job. It's okay to give up that European vacation because you know what? You're a mother. And being a mother is all that will garner you happiness. But more importantly, you're also pushed on more responsibility. Because if something is rewarding, you have to work for that reward. So if the rewards are greater, your responsibility is greater. This is a way in which society tells you that it's a responsibility of women to look after their children. It's a responsibility of women to ensure that the children are brought up, and this narrative is a key component of that. We think that motherhood is great, but it's not as great as society will tend to inflame it to be. We beg to propose.
like to invite the first speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Members of the House, in society today, we tell males that every job they do is rewarding. We tell young boys that it is rewarding for them to aspire to be soldiers, doctors, lawyers, and we tell them to pursue their dreams. We think it is the height of patriarchy to tell mothers that the work they do at home, such as caring for their child, educating them, cooking for them, is not equally valuable just because they are women. That's what we oppose. What's our stance? First, we do not regret the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. Second, this obviously does not mean you have to stand for coerced or forced experiences of motherhood, such as for instance when a woman is raped. Hence, this debate is clearly about instances where women chooses to engage in motherhood. So to be clear, this debate falls under the category of third wave feminism, where we recognize women's choices and we think that their agency should always be respected. Next, this does not mean we cannot stand for other empowering narratives, such as, for example, women choosing to pursue a career in the workplace. We can also stand for fatherhood being an equally rewarding experience. No thank you. The Warrior vision is one where motherhood is valued by society, as is the case with any other profession. And this means that we are more likely to have things such as pension schemes for elderly women, or paying housewives for their work. What's our case division? First, I'll be proving to you how outside empowers mothers. Second, how we change societal attitude towards women, while my second speaker will discuss how outside creates more equality in domestic responsibilities. But before that, a few rebuttals against their case. First, I'll be taking down their first substantive on false narratives, and secondly, I'm going to prove to you why motherhood is not coercive. But before that, let's just note that their case is already shrinking even before I rebutted it at all, because they claim that this debate was only about instances where choices were coerced. We told you very clearly that this debate needed to be about all instances, and their side needs to defend the majority burden of this debate, not just the instances where it's coercive. And I'm going to prove to you why in the majority of circumstances, it is not coercive, and women do make the choice, and we should empower them. On their first substantive, that it is a false narrative, let's just note that they accept the benefits, but their only claim is that there are other physical pains that are present as well. Two responses. Let's just note that their rant about males doesn't really work, because I think that the pain of motherhood is equally subjective for all individuals, regardless of whether or not you are male. So I just remove this narrative from this debate. Second, they claim there was a difference between objective and subjective pain, that some benefits were objective while the pains were subjective. Let's just note that everything within motherhood is subjective as well. The pain that a mother suffers, the joys that a mother suffers, are all equally subjective. So who is to adjudicate whether or not it is rewarding or not? I think that the metric for adjudication is to be choice, and you think that the choice is something that outside empowers. Let's move on to the last random idea on identity. I think that if anything, having a rewarding narrative is what empowers women even more. I'm going to show you later why this rewarding narrative is what empowers women in the workplace as well, something that the other side wanted to talk about. On the idea of coercion, we think that outside breaks the idea of coercion because we think there are competing narratives on outside of the house as well. So we think that women can make a fair and balanced choice with regards to whether or not they think the choice of parenthood is clear. No thank you. So I think that this is basically their case dealt with. My first substantive will show you how we empower women. The thesis of this argument is that women who choose to be mothers should not be told that they are oppressing themselves. We start from a very basic premise that motherhood is something that a sizable number of women are going to engage in. We obviously do not live in a world with artificial wombs, or one where males can take on the biological function of giving birth to a child. So for society to function, we do need offspring, and we think that only women can do this. In fact, I think it is uniquely empowering to be a woman, to be able to carry on your legacy, to be able to contribute to the future of humanity by giving birth to the next generation of people. So why is the narrative that motherhood is rewarding, empowering for these women? Because we believe that it is wrong to tell these women that they are oppressing themselves. If anything, I think this narrative stands on a very patriarchal notion that the value of the work is based on what men do. So if their side says it's coercive, I think their side entrenches this coercion even more. Think about it. A mother's process of teaching their children, pouring their hearts and souls into the child's upbringing, is inherently valuable. When a mother goes through children's fairy tales and Aesop's fables, instilling moral values, no thank you, into a daughter, till the day she comes home with a police force job acceptance letter in her hands. When a mother nurtures social interaction skills into her son, till the day she sees him walking down the aisle, happily married. So who is Team Bangladesh to say that all of these emotional fruits of labor are always inferior to capitalist pursuits? For the moment,
Sir.
hence, we think that we recognize that the fruits of motherhood is empowering. But before I move on, sure.
In a world where these successes of the children don't exist, what do you tell mothers under your world?
Look, we think that you can debate only a small sliver of this debate when the children become unsuccessful. The point of sight of Team Singapore is very clear. We think that when mothers engage in parenthood, they recognize that there's a spectrum of outcomes that might occur to a child. But regardless, the choice that they make is empowering. They need to deal with this entire spectrum, not just the cases where the child goes wrong. If anything, I'll bite the bullet and say that even if a child doesn't become as useful a member of society or becomes a criminal, for example, that doesn't mean that the idea of motherhood inherently is invaluable, because mothers themselves made the choice with this recognition. But let's just note that the idea of disempowerment only stands on their side, because it stands on the male narrative that only office work is valuable. So the point here is this: on both sides, women are going to choose to be mothers. The question is why proposition can tell them it is not valuable. Let's then move on to the second substantive, on how we change societal attitudes towards women. The thesis of this argument is that the narrative that motherhood is rewarding combats the notion that the work of women is inferior to that of men. We start from the central claim that the narrative that motherhood is rewarding for the mother equally tells society that motherhood is valuable. Think about it. We tell lawyers and doctors, no thank you, that the job is rewarding for them as an individual. But we think that similarly, that this can be done for motherhood as well, to tell them that their job is equally valuable for society. And with this, we think that we can protect a spectrum of women. First, we protect working mothers, what side proposition wanted to talk about. We think that workplace gossip entrenches the narrative that working mothers who choose to take care of their children are quitters or losers. If anything, I would suggest that it is on our world where we are able to break this narrative, to be able to tell mothers that they are making an empowering and rewarding choice, and there are practical benefits to it. We are talking about, for example, fairer promotion chances, because we recognize that women who choose to become a mother for about 5 or 7 years are doing something that should be respected. It looks like, for example, providing for maternity leave, because I think that maternity leave will only be provided on our side, where we recognize that what women do is valuable, and not just a waste of time or coercion as their side wants to say. Second, we think we are able to better protect stay-at-home mothers as well. Now, there's a greater societal expectation to reward monetarily the work that mothers did. On their side of the house, because what mothers do seem to be fueled by oppression, there's no incentive for the government to help these women monetarily with their job. But given that we recognize that on both sides, there will be a vast majority of mothers who choose to engage in motherhood, our side protects them better when we increase the incentive for things like pay for women, for example, or maternity leave, or things like, for example, paying mothers to be housewives in the family. So I think that all of these are benefits on the outside of the house. At the end of the day, we recognize that motherhood is a choice we must dignify, reoppose.
Alright, I would like to thank the first speaker of the side opposition, and now I invite the second speaker of side proposition to deliver their speech.
Claiming that something is rewarding is not the same as claiming that it's valuable. To a great degree, when you say that something is rewarding, you are claiming this to an individual person who is now questioning whether or not it is rewarding in the first place. Claiming that it is valuable is one that you pose to an entire community, to an entire society, making them believe that this entire action is to a great degree valuable. It's not the same as when you tell that one person that this is a rewarding experience, so you should opt into it. But more importantly, they continuously wash away our argumentation about coercion, saying that it's all justified simply because it's ending in a good way. We think that if it were true, they would also justify deceiving people to donate one of their 2 kidneys deluding them to the point that they believe that this won't hurt you. More importantly, deluding them to the point that they believe that it will be rewarding, never ever recognizing the immense cost to it. But no, we think that's horrible. Because the same way in which you delude that person to believe that their bodily autonomy is not that important, that the physical harms are not that important, the psychological harms don't exist, we think that analogy applies here as well. We believe women cannot be used as battering rams for the society's economic labor, for families to pass on their legacies, for the families to go on down the heritage lines. Because while they sacrifice so much, it is true to say that they get little in return. More importantly, as I'll prove to you, why states give them very little in return. First point of argumentation from that side. Patriarchal societies, no thank you, say that motherhood is not valuable. We think portraying motherhood is not a rewarding experience. It's not the same as portraying. It's not the same as portraying that it is valuable. You can show that it's a valuable experience by telling people about the immense costs of it, the immense harm that these women go through, and they still do it simply to benefit the society. What you do in your side of the house is tell them that you, when you go through this period of motherhood, get more rewards than the sacrifices. That on an individualistic scale, this is the holy grail of reward. That this benefit outweighs any of those harms, and therefore you should not ask for more. But more importantly, if they want to place this debate in patriarchal societies, we think your side worsens it. Where people believe that this experience is in and of itself so rewarding that perhaps us catering to these women is not a necessity anymore. That perhaps they get so much more in return. That when they claim that we need paid maternity leaves, that we need more people in the society to cater to their needs, their demands, that it's more of an asking for a privilege. We think that's a world in which your patriarchal societies get worsened. Secondly, they tell you that you entrench coercion by showing that it is oppressive. No, we are not telling people that, motherhood is a wrong thing to do. We're not telling people that it's an oppressive thing to do. All we are saying is that we need people to recognize that there are harms, that there are also benefits. And for these people to find that out by themselves. We believe that there will be people who look out into the society and see how some women do get certain levels of rewards. When they see their child walk, when they see their child speak their first words, those are rewards that they will categorically conceive. But the problem is when you tell these women that those rewards are so immense that it will outweigh any sorts of harms, and to a great degree you will not let them know those harms in the first place. That is the comparative that you need to address. Then they tell you that the pain and the benefits are always subjective. So we need to empower choice. And that's exactly our stance. We need to empower choice. For that we need to get rid of the most coercive narrative, and the result of which is this belief. Lastly, no thank you, bringing children up to be successful, carrying their legacy on is immensely beneficial to the community. They concede that these women will to a great degree want to be women to a great degree will want to be mothers in the first place. So I don't see why conceiving children is going to be a loss for our side. They will conceive children. The comparative is, in which side does the pressure on children increase? In a world where you tell that the reward is in the form of your children being successful, in the form of your children not being recalcitrant, of your children being obedient, that is a world in which the pressure on these children to subscribe to the same illusions that you have portrayed, that you have given this to these mothers, is a world in which you coerce those children to meet those demands that these women have. Coerce those children to fulfill those demands that these women have. And in a world in which they do not, these women become frustrated to a point where the family life becomes worse. And that is the comparative that you need to address. Yes?
We told you very clearly that the value of motherhood exists regardless of whether or not the child is beneficial. Your burden is to show why there are more harms than benefits to motherhood, not that they are just harms.
Yes, we told you why there are harms. To a great degree, the harms of your physique, the harms done to your physique, your financial fabric, the fact that no one in your society can understand the extent to which you are being damaged. That is the objective harm that exists. To a great degree, we understand that for some women, the subjective happiness of seeing their child walk is to a great degree more important. That is why we give them that choice. We do not coerce every single one, and the majority of which will be harmed more than benefited. We do not coerce them to conceive children, even when they would not want to, if they knew about the harms being as immense, if not greater, than the happiness. First point of argumentation, why motherhood leaves you vulnerable even in your future, and the state gives you very little in return. Your sacrifices, no thank you, your sacrifices for the children significantly outweighs the rewards to the extent that it leaves mothers vulnerable even in their future. Your narrative blinds women from foreseeing all of this because you give them illusions of happiness that outweighs those harms. What are those harms? First of all, the sacrifice of her physique. Starting from the time when she was pregnant to breastfeeding their children, they give up their physique to cater to the child. These are irreversible harms to the extent that they often last even in their future. Secondly, you often have to sacrifice your job, your savings into raising that child, especially during your maternity leave. This hurts that woman's financial fabric to a point that it's often unrecoverable. More importantly, especially in developing countries, the responsibility of bringing that child up is mostly on mothers. They have to sacrifice their jobs for 16 years to educate and bring their child up. This massive lag in their job experience means they often cannot get a job back even in future. These are ways in which mothers are left bodily and financially vulnerable during the period of motherhood and even beyond that in their future. In reciprocity, the state gives them very little protection. In most states, even in the USA, there is no filial responsibility laws. Children, when they grow up and need to look after their own family, their own business, and especially their own children, they have very little capacity to look after their families. Often they do not realize that they have a moral obligation to look after their parents, which means they are still vulnerable. Second, in the vast majority of countries, women have less political capital. Very few parties cater to them, and especially when they grow old, because they are less economically productive, very few states have an incentive to cater to them. The conclusion is that when these women become vulnerable, the state and the community together gives them very little protection during that period of vulnerability. This narrative blinds you from seeing that. First of all, it's a relationship that is unreciprocated. You give more, you get very little from that child. But secondly, you give more, but you give very little. You get very little from the state that coerces you to do all of this. The narrative glorifies those 16 to 18 years of motherhood, venerates it with illusions, and blinds you from expecting the ways in which this period will expropriate your self-defense, your protection, while the ones that propagate it will give you very little in return. The problem in this debate is not the fact that we do not understand how motherhood is valuable. We do that, and especially that can be done better in our world. We do not think that motherhood is in and of itself a rewarding experience, where we think that we need to reward them, that we need to give them a value, not the fact that this experience will be in and of itself valuable enough. We are very proud to propose.
Invite the second speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
I'm going to do two things in rebuttal. First, I'm going to deal with choice and show you why they're shirking their burdens in this debate. And second, I'm going to prove to you that motherhood can be empowering for women. So first, on choice. Now, team proposition does mount a very determined effort to evade the motion they were given today. Just because we say something is rewarding doesn't actually mean we have to say it was absolutely always rewarding, doesn't mean we have to hide the costs, doesn't mean we have to force you to do it, and doesn't mean this narrative has to be absolutely unopposed. Take the example of kidney donations. In most societies, we tell you that donating your kidney can be rewarding because it's helping to save another person's life. That doesn't mean we drag you to the hospital and forcibly cut out your kidneys. That doesn't mean we obscure the fact that donating your kidney is a no opt-out clause because you can't just grow another kidney back. That doesn't mean we shame you if you choose not to donate your kidney. It simply means we tell you that if you choose to donate your kidney, it can be a rewarding thing for you. Similarly, their burden in this debate is not to show you that it is bad when we force women to become mothers, because that is not what this debate is about. This debate is about telling you in cases where you choose to be a mother, why that can be rewarding. But just because we support one narrative doesn't mean we cannot support other narratives as well. So we can say it is equally empowering to go into the workplace. It is equally empowering for fathers to be parents as well. The point is this: the entirety of the case is not dealing with the motion and the case we set out. Because saying something is rewarding does not equate to forcing you to do it. And that's an important thing we have to note in this debate. In fact, by the logic, all narratives are very, very, very coercive. It is coercive to force people to get married because there is no opt-out clause, because you can't get back the years you spent married to that person. You can't, there's huge amounts of bodily autonomy lost because you have to talk to your spouse and live in the same house as a spouse, for instance. So literally every single choice that they want to stand for is going to be coercive as well. The question is this: When people weigh the costs and benefits and decide that it is meaningful for them, why is it that this is not rewarding, and why is it something that we should frown upon? Literally, that case seems to tell us that if a person chooses to become a mother, they would tell that person, no thank you sir, that she's betraying her sex, that she's oppressing herself and living under a false consciousness. That is not what we think is happening. We think in the vast majority of cases, because even if that case is true, it is at the margins, but in the majority of cases, we think what we stand for is a world where mothers choose to be mothers, and that is empowering for them. The second speaker's argument is the idea of how even if you have choice now, it circumscribes your choices in the future. We don't think that's true. First of all, I want to point out that on our side, we actually expand the choices of women because we help them to expand access to the workplace. Now, the second speaker says, saying something is rewarding doesn't mean it's valuable. No, in our first speaker, we clearly drew the link. When you say something is rewarding, that means that you aren't wasting your time doing it. That means that you are having a productive life, for example, doing it, and you aren't just being, no, thank you, sir, a random person who is wasting the life away. That links to the idea that it's valuable because you are contributing to your life and having a meaningful life. If anything, the notion that women are wasting their time or are useless or are inferior to men stems often from the idea that the work they do at home is not valuable. So in fact, on our side, we increase access to the workplace. Because the reason why women don't have access to the workplace right now is because of the notion that they are wasting their time outside and that the woman is being a burden to society if we let her be a mother. If anything, on our side, we encourage more government support, no thank you sir, for mothers who want to return to the workplace. Because we understand that the mothers who have gone to become mothers have created a valuable contribution to society.
Sir?
So the point is that, on our side, we do not stand for coercion, no thank you sirs. In fact, what we stand for is choice. Because at the point at which a mother chooses to stay at home, at the point at which a woman chooses to have a child and become a mother, we think it is our duty not to tell her that she is wrong and that she doesn't know best for herself, but to tell her that she is doing something that is rewarding for her. My second contention, therefore, is on whether motherhood is actually rewarding as a concept, and I'm going to show you that it is in many cases. So the first thing they say is, what if your child is not successful? Well, we think many children are successful. Now, I know we are both Asian nations who have very Asian notions of what success is going to be. But we think in many cases, parents are often proud of who their children become. They are proud of their children carrying on their legacy. They are proud of their children when they find a job, even if their job comes 10 years later than you thought it would. When your child gets their first paycheck, we think that is a hugely proud moment for their parent. And note that they themselves concede that this debate cannot be about absolutely unopposed narratives, because they say that they would tell women it is rewarding to have small moments like seeing a child walk. If they believe that there is no opt-out clause with motherhood, if they believe that it is always disempowering, then they would tell us that nothing about motherhood is helpful, nothing about motherhood is rewarding. The fact that they don't is because they concede that this debate has to be about weighing the costs and benefits. And in the case we told you that many of these women are going to find meaning in their motherhood experiences. We think it is the height of patriarchy to say that meaning exists only in the wage you receive. Meaning exists only in the promotion you receive at work. We think meaning can equally be found in the experiences mothers have at home. And it's because this work is not done on the battlefield as a soldier, done in the court as a lawyer, done in the hospital as a doctor. Does not make it any less valuable for mothers as a whole. No, thank you, sir. My argument for today is on how we create equality in domestic responsibilities. The central claim in this argument is that we encourage males to take up more responsibilities at home. So again, this uses the highest ground of women who are forced to stay at home. If anything, we think there are going to be women who, unfortunately, as they say in patriarchal societies, will be forced to stay at home on both sides. The question is, given that they have domestic responsibilities, which side ensures greater equality by ensuring that fathers also play a part in domestic responsibilities. So what does this look like? It looks like doing chores at home, so women aren't the only ones doing chores. It looks like spending time taking care of the child at home, for instance, because the parent is someone who is able to share responsibilities for picking up the child after work or caring for the child as childcare. Why is it true that on our side, we have more fathers who are willing to play a role at home? We think the notion that motherhood is inherently not rewarding stems from the idea that any work done at home is inherently less valuable and degrading. The idea that if I contribute at home or I stay at home, I am not contributing to society, and that is why motherhood is not rewarding. The idea of how many of the things they talk about, how it takes away your future career options, also apply equally to fathers as well. And therefore, on their side, they discourage fathers from being able to have work and stay at home and care for their child, because equally many of their arguments are symmetric and apply to fathers as well. Before I move on, sure.
By your own analogy, the death of soldiers isn't particularly rewarding for that soldier itself, but we recognize that it is valuable, important, and not degrading. Why does everything that is valuable have to be tied to the notion of reward?
So, we do acknowledge that being a soldier is rewarding. We think it is rewarding to stand up there and die for your country, and stand up there and protect the country where your family lives. Similarly, we think it is rewarding when you stand up there and raise a family, when you raise someone and mold someone into the image of who you want that person to be. You have to show us why this reward is not something that you can recognize, and we think it's often linked to patriarchal notions of what capital gives meaning. So my argument, therefore, is on the idea of how we encourage more parents and more fathers to contribute at home. As I said just now, the idea of how their arguments often apply equally symmetrically to fathers as well. So the idea of how there's no opt-out clause when you leave the workplace and you can't return in the future. The idea of how it's physically demanding. Unfortunately, we understand that many women do bear the brunt of pregnancy, but their arguments are often what discourages fathers from staying at home and taking care of the child as well. Given that on both sides, what they're doing is essentially disencouraging fathers from being able to stay at home and take care of the child, we think it especially punishes mothers, because like they themselves admit, there is already a societal perception and an expectation for mothers to stay at home. In that case, if there is already an existing societal expectation for mothers to stay at home, then if you levy the same narrative on both sexes, we think you disproportionately levy the family work and domestic responsibilities on the mother, because fathers similarly don't want to stay at home and take care of the child. We obviously change that because of all of the arguments we told you about in the first speaker, on how we encourage more women and more men as a whole to understand that domestic work is meaningful. And this means we bring fathers back into the home. We ensure that after work, they are able to help out with household chores. We encourage more stay-at-home fathers who allow their wives, for instance, to go out and work in the workplace. That creates equality on our side. We understand that motherhood is a choice we must dignify. We are very proud to oppose.
Alright, I'd like to thank the second speaker of the opposition and would like to invite the third speaker on the proposition to deliver their speech.
This debate cannot be about women who choose to be moms, because for them, narratives don't affect them, right? Because they believe that that is what they truly want. This debate is also not about people who don't want to be mothers, because nothing can convince them, like these narratives cannot convince them that it's okay to be that. This debate is about people who are making decisions at the margin, people who are in the middle, who are uncertain about whether they can or cannot be mothers. And it is there we say whether that belief of the glorification of motherhood, whether that helps them to make a good decision or helps them to make a bad decision. Second thing to clarify is their entire idea of creating this forced link between the fact that rewards essentially mean valuable. Look, we already told you that in cases where you get some rewards out of something, doesn't automatically make it very valuable, and vice versa applies. So, you might give a lot of money to charity, right? Billions of dollars, but you might not get any rewards out of that because that money wasn't used to good use. Which means that it is a valuable thing and a gesture that you did, but that didn't give the rewards that you really want to get. We don't think it applies in all cases. Having that cleared out, three things I'll be talking to you about in this speech. First, under which world are women worse off? Second, is it really true? And if it's not, why it's principally abhorrent as to what they do? Thirdly, under which world you protect more children? Before I move on, sure.
Your narrative affects women who want to be mothers because it makes them feel ashamed of their choice and tells them that they were acting wrongly.
Why does it make them feel ashamed if we say that it's very painful? You have to sometimes give up things, and that you might not ever get back again. We don't think that is shame, that is a realistic reality check telling that mom that you have to give up a lot, right? Going into more of this in my clash. First, why are women worse off under their world? The first thing that they said, and that's their argumentation, that it empowers women to have a choice to motherhood and doesn't oppress them. Two responses here. First, we think that it is a delusional thing that society entrenches upon people that motherhood is all like butterflies and rainbows, right? How many ads did you have to see about when a mother struggled her entire life, but when the first day she saw the child walk, forgot about everything, and everything was fine? We think these are psychological nudges that you give women, claiming that all these sacrifices that you made previously, that is now okay. The entire top side didn't engage to that comparative. It's not about whether seeing your child makes you feel very happy. It's about what society tells you that it is rewarding. A reward is the additional things that you get post your effort, right? Which essentially means that that's a very delusional thing to do. And here's where my stakeholder analysis as to why it's people in the middle that get affected. Because people in the middle, when they're trying to make this decision, right, that okay, is it really worth it? When they see these sorts of ads, when they see these people constantly telling them that guess what, everything will be forgotten, the sacrifices you made, the bodily pain that you made, or the fact that you left your job, is all right, because when you see your child walk, it's gonna be fine. We think that is the delusion that they feed, and we think that's taking away empowerment. Because under our world, we believe knowledge is the best form of empowerment that you can give women, where you can give women reality checks, saying that it's not going to be always okay, it's not going to be that, guess what, just because you see your child becoming a police officer means that you'll forget the sacrifices that you made, you might still feel bad about it. We think these are important things to tell moms, and that is when you empower women, where you do not give them false lies, but you give them the true reality checks so that they can assess for themselves. But secondly, their idea why societal attitude changes, right? So if I break this down, the case doesn't exist. The first thing is that they claim that the attitude towards people change. And here's a simple logical flaw that I found there. If it's already very rewarding bearing a child, why would society want to give you more rewards? Because if you remember this correctly, they claim that society would be willing to give you more things for the pain that you bear. But I'm sorry, this is apparently the most rewarding thing in your life. Why will the society be incentivized to give you more? If anything, society actively tries to take away things from women by telling them that guess what, you do get things. That's a sad thing to say, but society really feels that way. We don't think, ladies and gentlemen, they have an incentive structure under their world that creates any sort of incentive, any sort of change. But more importantly, why does our world change this incentive? Because under our world, motherhood is a selfless act with oftentimes no rewards or little rewards. Where women do this at the good of their heart, women do this because they want the next generation to be fine. We think when you prioritize women as doing something of a selfless act, only then will the society want to change their attitudes, not under their world, ladies and gentlemen. In comparison, what did we give you? And these are things that haven't been refuted, right? We told you why there's a disproportionate responsibility that you bestow upon women, because how many times have you heard or seen in an ad that fatherhood is rewarding? Because in the vast majority of cases, it was always motherhood to be the bearing light of what it means to bring out a child. What that does is, in patriarchal and developing countries, we're not just talking about nice countries and liberal countries. In these countries, it's a way in which people bestow extra responsibility, which they say that since this is so rewarding for you, please go take care of them. We think that is something, an active harm that they don't stop. But secondly, we think the entire argument that we showed to you about why states don't give protection is also re-established, given that on a comparative we showed that under their world there's no incentive for a reward. At least under our world, state recognizes the fact that these women are doing a selfless act and we need to give them additional rewards and additional protection for it. So conclusion being, under our world, we create an incentive structure for women to be helped in society. Under their world, they don't. Second, is it really true? If not, why is that bad? No, thank you, right? Note that it's crucial to recognize that our cases are not the minority of cases like they would like you to think. Because success is very rare. What reality is that you don't go the way in which you perceive things to happen. But before I move on, sure.
So if you believe that the narrative of motherhood is so rewarding, then to be clear, why would if your side believes that the narrative of motherhood is not rewarding, why would there be any incentive for your side to ever reward mothers or encourage motherhood?
Because they know that since rewards don't exist, society must give the women rewards. As simple as that. But why isn't it true? Because note, it is their burden to tell us. Why? For in cases where it isn't true, you would still tell women that it is rewarding, right? That is their burden, because these are the women that are being deceived. Because we gave you a plethora of harms and the plethora of instances where these women are coerced, right? We told you about how they feel bodily pain, psychological pain, and things of that sort, and why the returns is not always existent, right? In that, we heard no response. So, in simple conclusion, given that we saw in some instances this must be true, you have no right to deceive these women in those certain instances, if not all. And lastly, as to what makes childhood better off. This is very simple, and I'll quote the second speaker here. They say that happiness comes when you mold someone into someone who you want them to be. If that is so, if you make women this dependent upon their child's success, imagine what they do to make sure that their child is successful, right? Because since we had no direct engagement, this contradiction in and of itself makes them lose this clash. For all these reasons, don't deceive women.
Alright, I would like to thank the third speaker of the proposition and would like to invite the third speaker of the opposition side to deliver.
My grandmother will turn 70 this year. She was not educated much as a child, but she has never stopped working a day in her life. And she did not work in an office desk and with a 9-to-5 job, but our family would be nothing without the contributions she did in our kitchen, our living room, and our study rooms. But yet, because government pensions in Singapore are only given to those who hold a formal job in the formal economy, today she finds herself under immense financial strain, because her work is not seen by society as being valuable or rewarding. All of this begins when young girls in classrooms proclaim their dream is to be a mother, but we scorn them and say that is wrong because that is not a job you should aspire towards in society. Proposition claims to dismantle the system of patriarchy, but what they are using is a century-old tool of doubting the choices of women, the very same tool that has been used to sustain this very system of patriarchy. We reject it. Two questions. First, how does our side empower women with choice? Secondly, how do we benefit mothers? First, how does our side benefit mothers with choice? At this point of the debate, their side has pulled a very nasty trick, because all they say is that you only have to prove that there is coercion here. They say the motion, but clearly the motion calls for them to oppose motherhood being a rewarding experience as a whole, not just in the case where they were coerced into it. So you have to deal with the majority burden that the motion clearly calls for you to defend. The last figure says you only want to talk about women in the margins. Doesn't sound to me like what the motion is calling for them to do. So even on these convenient grounds, let's take down this one claim of coercion. First response. Society also coerces men to work, because often this is also rooted in biological notions of men being more strong and more able to work in the workplace. But why does their side not say that this is wrong? Why does their side say it's fine to coerce men into entering a 9-to-5 job to make money for the family? Because are you suggesting to me that inferiority is coded into the DNA of women, that if they carry out that biological function of being a mother, that is just inferior to a man holding a job in the workplace? I'm not really sure what exactly that means. Second response. Society and team proposition has a long history of telling women that the choices they are making is wrong for them. For instance, saying that wearing makeup or wearing high heels is wrong. But what we say is that your issue here, therefore, is not about coercion, because coercion always exists in every choice that all of us make in society. You are here wearing nice clothes because society says if you don't wear clothes, you would wear good clothes, you would probably look unpalatable to society. So every choice is coerced. This suggests to me that your problem is not coercion. Your problem is that you don't like this choice, and you've not proven to me why this is inherently degrading choice that women should not be able to access. Third, we think that this motion is also about women who do actively choose to opt into motherhood, so they have to defend this part of the motion. But even if they do in proposition reply, probably too late for that. But we think that even for women who engage in this, who opt into this, we think we should empower these choices. What we should regret is not the expectation of women entering motherhood, but the larger societal structures that do not value them entering and engaging in these expectations. Because we have a 9-to-5 work day that says that you cannot reconcile your childcare responsibilities with being a person who works. Because your side says we should not pay housewives because this job is not valuable. Because your side says we have no place for women in the formal economy when we create this capitalist structure. women are not rewarded for the choices that they take up. So they tell us here that this all male team tells us that they assume what is best for women. I'm sorry, but no one in this room knows what is best for every single woman. So what we should err on is maximizing the number of choices that women can access. And for every choice they do access, even if it's to be a mother, we should accept that and create the best possible conditions for these women who choose to do that. I'm going to deal with the next advance coming from the previous speaker about how the narrative currently is too skewed to be rewarding women who want to become mothers, and therefore we should rebalance this scale. First, are you seriously suggesting that women don't know what they are getting into when they are pregnant? Literally, look at the number of pregnancy books that you see in bookstores, the number of how women, young girls are often listening to their mothers about their stories of giving birth to a child. They know all of this, and even if they don't, they have friends, everyone who are around them who does give birth to a child. Think about all those family gatherings and someone says, when you give birth to a child, you need to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, this is what it's going to be like. So clearly, we don't think that there's a problem with information asymmetry. But second, your side is rather extreme here, because if you claim that the halves are always going to be so bad, then you are essentially saying you are restricting choice for every single woman because it is just so bad to be a mother. That sounds to me like the most anti-feminist argument you can probably come up with, because we think that women should be able to make choices. Your side does not allow them to do that. Second question on how our side benefits mothers. I'm going to here deal with the new advance in the third speaker, because they said if motherhood is so rewarding, you will find other ways to, you always find meaning in it regardless, so the narrative does not affect them. This makes no sense. Societal narratives obviously inform public policy. And here's where I'll deal with their third substantive. As they correctly identify, the problem with the status quo is that the state does not compensate women. But the mechanism is strange. Ask an appeal why is it that when we say that something is rewarding, we will get rewards for this? Because clearly, we exist in a capitalist society. So value is often ascribed with capital. If you give me a moment. That's why lawyers and doctors get the highest salaries, because we see that these jobs are rewarding. And that's why they are compensated with the highest salaries of society, because society places a higher premium on you engaging in these jobs. Clearly, in a capitalist society, when you say something is rewarding, you get more rewards for that. Before I go on, yes?
If this information asymmetry does not exist, and if the benefits are so objectively true, then why won't women conceive children and bring them up to be better human beings on our side of the house?
Because we think that on your side, you literally tell them that there's not regrading. And this is what leads governments to not have support for them, because they have to make a choice between entering the workforce or being a mother. That's what happens when you say that only one mode of being a woman is legitimate, because your side forces them to, in this false binary. Back to my arguments. When they say that motherhood is not rewarding, there is less of an incentive to remunerate these individuals for entering motherhood, because now states see mothers as not being economically productive, have no incentive to give them pensions or support schemes. What is the comparative on our side? The first thing we told you is that our side benefits working mothers. After giving birth to me, my mother went back to work, only to receive a huge pay cut because she took her entirety of her maternity leave. And this signaled to her employers that she was taking her motherhood responsibilities too seriously. That is what will happen on your world when you say that motherhood being a rewarding experience is not a legitimate idea. So on your side, women who go back to the workplace do not get appreciated because they are simply seen as favoring one form of being a woman more than the other. Sounds a lot to me like your case. Before I go on, yes?
If motherhood is already rewarding, why would external forces want to reward it more?
I literally just dealt with this argument by saying that on your side, you do not reward them. You can't claim that the comparative is that we already reward them too much. When women don't have pension schemes currently because they don't have a job, when women who are housewives don't get remunerated, you can't argue to me that now we are rewarding women too much. That simply goes against the grain of reality. Back to my argument. Even if we take that case at the highest, so let's accept that substantive is true, that when you say something is more or less valuable, you have more rewards for this. This helps our argument on fatherhood, because we say that when you make fatherhood seem more rewarding, you have more government support, and this helps women as well, because you don't have to be the only ones shouldering the responsibility of taking care of the entire family alone. So your own argument at its highest point directly proves our point about why fatherhood is important as well, and why we should forward the narrative that fatherhood can also be an important experience. The second group of people who benefit are stay-at-home mothers, because as I've told you, capitalist society only values people who work in the workplace, but women who don't directly generate economic activity by being a housewife now benefit on our side as well, when there is more incentive to cater to them, as we've proven to you previously in our second speaker. So what proposition does is to shackle women in inferior positions where they are not valued or celebrated under the disguise of good intentions. We think that motherhood is a choice that we must dignify. We stand very firmly in opposition.
think it's quite telling that the third speaker ends off by saying, don't deceive women. Because the subtext of the case is that women are deceiving themselves, that they are making the wrong choice for themselves, and that they don't know what's good for them. You know, they sound very strongly in first talk and say that on our side, this narrative will be absolutely unopposed. But we push back in second speaker and tell you that that is not what the motion calls for us to stand for. They retreat and they say, oh yeah, we admit you can have other narratives as well. In which case we point out, this debate cannot be about forcing women to become mothers. Because we can have other narratives as well. We can tell women it is equally rewarding to go out to work and get a high-paying job. We can tell women that it is equally rewarding to be a working mother who both works and stays at home to take care of her child. The question is this: when a woman chooses to devote some part of her life to taking care of her child and raising her child, why must we tell her to be ashamed? Why must we tell her that she's making the wrong choice? So I want to look at the two words that emerge at the end of this debate and understand how the word of proposition was empowering. So one of the lines they have left at the end of this debate is that you will discourage governments from being able to provide support for mothers. And they said on their side, governments will still provide support for mothers. That is a bit strange, because the premise of the entire case is that motherhood is always bad. The physical pain always outweighs any rewards you might be able to get. In that case, they can't stand for governments giving help to mothers because they will encourage more women to become mothers. If they want to be consistent in that case, they cannot stand for any government help for mothers at all. Because any government help for mothers, any policies like maternity leave, will encourage more women to become mothers. And if the central premise in their case is that motherhood is always a bad thing, then to be consistent, they can't stand for government help at all. So to be clear, unless they abandon the entirety of their first argument, we have to recognize that the world they stand for is a world where society doesn't help mothers. They must actively stigmatize the idea of being a mother, because being a mother is always a false choice, that is always going to be bad for the woman. The reason why they didn't stand for that earlier is because they conceded that motherhood can sometimes be empowering, and that is the case we ran. More importantly, we told you, when women choose to be mothers, we think it is important for them to be able to feel empowered. What the word of proposition does is make them feel ashamed. Recognize that this debate must actually apply to these mothers. And if you want to talk about on the margins, then sure, if women wavering on the fence, deciding whether to become a mother or not, if they choose to become a mother anyway, what they do is tell them that they are making the wrong choice. What they do is strip them away of the ability to get help from society. What is the comparative, and why must we escape the world of the proposition to move to the world of the opposition? The world of the opposition is a world where we ensure that women are able to access the full spectrum of choices that we believe they should have access to. We ensure that whatever women choose to do, it is told that they are rewarding. More importantly, when women choose to make this choice, we give them practical support. Because on our side, we don't stigmatize motherhood. We tell you that motherhood can be a legitimate choice. And when we understand that motherhood is a legitimate choice, that is when governments provide support. That is when companies provide support. That is when societies provide support. Because we understand that this is not something to be frowned upon, it is something to be looked upon and rewarded. There is a reason, and it's not a coincidence. Why is it every profession we think is rewarding, we tend to value it even more in society? We say that being a soldier is rewarding for yourself, but it's also something we value, which is why we help veterans. We say that being a doctor is rewarding because they help patients, but we also help to value it in society because we understand that they save lives in society. The point is this: on our side, we ensure that when women choose to make the choice to become mothers, this is something we respect. And I think that at a debate competition where we're all very far away from home, I think it's pretty apt that we are brought to think about a debate where we remember our mothers, where we remember the work that our mothers have done for us, when they bring us up, when they spend, like they said, 16 to 18 years of their life caring for us, educating us, and making us a better person. I think all of us should think about our mothers and the work they have done, and recognize that it is wrong to say that just because this work was not done in an office, just because it was not done on the battlefield, just because it was not done in the hospital, that it is inherently less valuable. We understand that motherhood is a choice we must dignify, we are very proud to oppose.
Okay, I would like to thank the reply speaker of the opposition and would like to invite the reply speaker of the proposition to deliver the speech.
We need to give women a choice. When did we ever say that we shouldn't give them the choice? Their premise of that argumentation is that patriarchal societies exist where women are told to not be mothers. That's factually incorrect because in patriarchal societies, you force women to a great degree through arbitrary coercive factors to become mothers. But even if it were true, they never tell me why this narrative in and of itself will force government to give maternity leaves, will force government to respect women, and will force patriarchal societies to respect women wherein they have entrenched anti-feminist sexist views. Their argumentations are flawed because of the lack of analysis. They claim this narrative glorifies mothers as social workers, glorifies mothers as soldiers who deserve to be respected. Is this really what a rewarding experience means? Is this really what rewarding experience means when you say that the period of motherhood is rewarding and claiming that somehow makes women looked upon as people who need to be respected? In fact, we told you why. When you glorify this experience in and of itself as rewarding, you make societies unwilling to cater to these women, to give them additional rewards in spite of all those sacrifices, because you think that the experience was in and of itself rewarding enough on a net scale. Then they tell you this narrative inspires mothers to bring their child up to become responsible women, responsible people. Once again, is this what a rewarding experience is? If this experience is in and of itself rewarding, I don't see how that obliges mothers to a great degree to bring their children up better. Lastly, this narrative inspires government to give maternity leaves and makes them respect women. First of all, this argumentation's premise is patriarchal societies or societies in which the government cracks down upon women. They claim that patriarchal societies will suddenly change because you claim that motherhood is a rewarding experience. No link as to how that mechanism happens. We told you why they'll rather snatch, in the vast majority of cases, if this transaction exists, they'll rather snatch things away from women, force them to take care of their children, instead of taking care of themselves in terms of jobs, in terms of other financial gains that they could possibly have gotten, because you think this experience is already rewarding. What does this narrative really look like? It is a net rewarding experience in all instances. That motherhood is in and of itself, regardless of the externalities, arbitrary factors, is rewarding. This glorifies things like watching your child walk, watching your child speak his first words, and claims that this experience is in and of itself so much overpowering the harms that it is a rewarding experience. They claim that this is not so coercive. Well, if it's really a widespread belief, as the motion already says, then probably it overpowers every other opposing narrative to the extent that this is to a great degree coercing. They told you that all choices are coerced. We told you why. One, they don't coerce people as vulnerable as women are, because they coerce men to be, social workers, they coerce men to work, and I don't see why those are as coercive as these are. But most importantly, the harms and the sacrifices required in all of those works are not as immense as this period of motherhood is. Most of the benefits are amazing. We do believe that we need to respect women. We do believe that governments need to cater to women and give them maternity leaves. But I don't see why their narrative provides all of that. They never told you why. One, the immense pressure on children does not exist. An absolutely unrefuted argument, because this narrative glorifies motherhood in a way that says when your child does this, this experience becomes rewarding. When that immense pressure exists on that child, we think family lives get worsened. They never told you why states don't betray, because we told you why state provides you with a promise, but then does not cater to you during your vulnerable periods. They never told you why these objective harms don't outweigh the benefits. They told you why some women will probably subjectively think that these benefits are amazing. We told you why those are minority of instances, whereas in the vast majority of cases, their harms are objectively greater, because they harm your physique, they harm your financial ability, they harm your family life. For all these reasons, we think we need to give women a choice, but in a more healthy fashion. We are very proud of oppose.